we have rare hurricanes in unlikely locations. It's been a while since we took a look at one of these Cycle Studios videos. The last one we looked at was about the tornado, that giant tornado that had tornadoes inside of it that I kind of low-key wanted to clip into its own video because I had a lot of fun with that reaction in particular, but I told myself that it was going to be a VOD exclusive. So if anyone wants to watch it, you're going to have to go find that VOD. I don't remember which one it is because I just give all of my VODs random titles because that's just how I wanted to do it. For now, I want to see what kinds of hurricanes that would appear in rare, unlikely locations.
Back in 1996, an incredibly rare storm was about to form in a very unlikely location.
Okay.
In mid-September, an upper-level, low-pressure system moved into the Great Lakes region. Around this time,
Its conditions aloft, cold, moist air sweeps across lakes, low, anchored over Great Lakes. I mean, given that it's the Great Lakes, that would make sense that a low-pressure system would form because, you know, water, lots of water in those lakes evaporating into the air and condensing into clouds. I mean, there's the concept of lake effect snow, where snow showers will just pop up around lakes simply because the water from the lakes are being evaporated.
Lake Huron's waters were unusually warm.
Yeah, like this. When the warmer the water, the more likely it's going to evaporate and then condense into clouds and then to rain.
About 18 to 20 degrees Celsius or 64 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. As that cold upper air passed directly over the relatively warm lake, instability was created. This then triggered a severe thunderstorm.
Yeah.
Here's an area of low pressure that is spinning across the Great Lakes, and therein lies a problem. We've seen some scattered showers, and at times the rain has been quite heavy.
The winds over the lake were intense, around 75 miles per hour. Thankfully, these strong winds were mainly over the lake itself and not the surrounding land. However, some shoreline...
Yeah, that's another thing about the... And that's why it's also scary to let... Sometimes if you have to go out at sea and then there's just a random storm that pops up.
Areas did report power outages, downed trees, and minor flooding. But
no.
overall, the damage was relatively low. So it sounds like a typical thunderstorm over the Great Lakes.
It also sounds like it's going to take a turn for the worse.
What's the big deal? Well, here is a satellite.
And this is what it looks like. This is what your average hurricane looks like, where, you know, you got that swirl formation, and it even has an eye. Like one of the I say trademark features, but one of the prime features of a hurricane is the eye of the storm, where it's completely calm. And this has an eye.
Image of that storm.
It looks like a hurricane, but it's not quite a hurricane. It doesn't really become a hurricane until the wind speed reaches until the average wind speed reaches at least 65 miles per hour. If it's less than that, it would usually be considered a tropical storm. But this is nowhere near the tropics, so it can't even be classified as that.
Look like. It kind of looks like a hurricane. In fact, essentially, it was a hurricane. Here's the thing, that cold core low system eventually transitioned to a warm core cyclone, which is very
and did you see all the spinning?
Typical of a tropical storm or hurricane. It also clearly has an eye-like feature.
Right there, you can see it.
Surrounded by spiral rain bands. On top of all of this, it produced wind.
I mean, in general, this is generally how low pressure systems work, is that they usually result in spiral patterns anyway, but the way that this one turned out most certainly looks like a hurricane.
It's in a Category 1 hurricane range, around 70 miles per hour.
Yeah, it has to be, another thing that you have to take into account wind speeds too. And were the wind speeds that high? Like, I know that it is possible for those types of winds to just happen in like places like this, but where you would just refer to them as hurricane force winds. But yeah, but whether or not you can correctly categorize them as a hurricane, I guess it really just depends.
And it definitely captured the attention of local meteorologists.
And I want you to notice, as this goes into motion, the swirling effect, the counterclockwise rotation of that area of low pressure. So a very unstable atmosphere here, and with the colder air aloft, we're getting almost a lake effect.
Yeah, lake effect. Yeah, that's just how lakes work. Like here, mentioning them counterclockwise. In the northern hemisphere, cyclones turn counterclockwise, but in the southern hemisphere, cyclones turn clockwise, and it has to deal with something called the Coriolis effect, and it just has to deal with like the tilt of the Earth's axis, among other things.
So to recap, it had a warm core, a symmetrical structure with an eye, and Category 1 hurricane force wind.
So technically, this would be considered a hurricane, because it meets at least a few of the criteria. I don't know if there's any other criteria to properly consider it a hurricane, but it's honorary at best.
So was it a hurricane? Well, the National Hurricane Center has not officially called this storm a hurricane.
Yeah.
Mostly because it formed in an unusual setting outside of the tropics.
Right, that's how it usually starts. They start out as tropical storms, which, as the name suggests, they'd have to start out in the tropics.
However, meteorologists who have studied this event have called it
Hurricane Huron, a look back at an ultra-rare storm.
A tropical cyclone, which means, yes, it was the same storm as a hurricane. Because remember, hurricanes are a subcategory of tropical cyclones.
Right. I mean, tropical cyclones go by different names in different parts of the world. Like East Asia, they're called typhoons. And I know that in the Indian Ocean, they're it usually just depends on location what they're called.
So yeah.
Yes, a hurricane once formed on the Great Lakes, and it was an epic storm.
Hurricane formed over the Great Lakes.
Yeah, I wasn't born during that. I did not exist yet at this time.
Thankfully, it was less of a disaster.
Yeah, there wasn't that much rain, but those storms definitely would have been, most likely have been severe.
And more of a meteorological curiosity.
Yeah.
But that brings us to today's video's topic, out of place hurricanes / tropical cyclones.
Let's check
From
it.
spinning hurricane-like storms.
Yeah, this is like a usual path of your average hurricane. They'll cross like the Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico, and then as the storm moves to the mainland, because it doesn't have all the warm water evaporating into it and condensing into the clouds here, it'll gradually continue to weaken, and it usually goes in this direction, where it eventually reduces back down to a tropical storm, and then it reduces into a tropical depression, and then it'll eventually fade away. Although there are some cases where it'll go up the coast of the country instead. It usually just depends on what other atmospheric conditions there are at the time.
Forms over the Midwest to full-fledged metacanes in the Mediterranean. Today we're going over several strange, out-of-place hurricanes.
Let's go.
Let's get into it.
All right, let's get going.
So let's actually start off with the Midwest. Yes, the Midwest.
Let's go. Yep, the heart of the U.S.
occur in the Midwest. Well, sometimes you see these maps of
these are typical hurricane maps.
Hurricane paths, and you kind of see them strike Texas and
they'll usually do they'll take multiple paths depending on whatever's going on up in the air.
Gulf of Mexico. But then after they make landfall, they kind of keep their shape for just a little bit over the central U.S.
And then eventually they weaken as they go over land.
And that got me thinking, what are some hurricanes that held their hurricane-like strength deep into the United States?
I think I recall there being at least one one cyclone that lasted that long.
Did any hurricanes reach Iowa, Nebraska, or Minnesota?
Or even as far north as Quebec, of all places.
Surprisingly, yes. One somewhat recent example is Hurricane Ike that occurred in 2008.
I remember when Hurricane Ike. Hurricane Ike was like all over the news back then. I distinctly remember this. Yeah, Ike, Katrina, and then there's several others that I definitely remember.
Hurricane Ike is actually one of the worst hurricanes on record.
Yeah, Ike was pretty bad. I mean, Katrina was already pretty bad as well, but Ike was also just as bad
in terms of fatalities and impact.
And then there was also one that struck New York, Hurricane Sandy as well.
74 were killed in Haiti, and 113 were killed in the United States.
Ugh.
Overall, it was a Category 4 major hurricane with top wind speeds of 145 miles per hour.
Yeah, that's the second highest category of hurricane.
And Hurricane Ike was
yeah, and beaches would be very, very dangerous during a hurricane.
Massive.
Oh yeah, my mom will never ever swim out in the ocean because she knows the kind of stuff that can lurk if you swim too far off the shore. You might think that the shore is not that far away, but then if you swim far enough, you're not going to see any land over the horizon. So, especially if you're out here in a hurricane.
In fact, it caused damage all the way from Louisiana to Texas. Of course, we're interested in its inland destruction, and Hurricane Ike is known for keeping its form and shape as it crossed into the United States.
Yeah, another thing that can happen with these types of hurricanes and stuff is that sometimes along the tail ends of the little spirals here, they'll end up like developing tornadoes and stuff. So that's something else that you'd have to watch out for.
If you take a look at its meteorological history, you can see that as it entered Texas, it still held on to its tropical storm strength up towards Arkansas. But if you look at satellite imagery, the satellite, it still retains that spiral formation. It still has quite a bit of rotation. Do you see how it still has that hurricane-like shape well into the United States? Remnants struck into Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and beyond. It even reached parts of Pennsylvania. In fact, there were wind speeds of 75 miles per hour reported in Ohio.
I feel like that I might remember that. I do remember this one windstorm that took place like way back then when I was living at a particular house, and I remember that school had a day off of school because there was a lot of damage, and there was a major windstorm.
I mean, that's category 1 strength winds in Ohio.
It's not uncommon. It's been very windy here for the past several months, like on and off.
Hurricane Ike is even more unusual than most inland hurricanes because
Their head on the water slides.
Most hurricanes usually just become kind of a rainstorm by this
point. That's what usually happens. They dissipate into a something more typical
point. But Hurricane Ike had much tighter circulation for quite a long time. It acted more like an inland hurricane. Another great example of this is Hurricane Carla in 1961. This was also a category 4 hurricane that hit Texas. But when looking at that meteorological
holy shit, wait, it lasted all
history, you can see it goes way up there, way up into Greenland.
Damn, no, that's one that, and it maintained itself all the way, no. If it went that far north, then it would have turned into, it would have turned into a full-on blizzard if it lasted for that long.
Absolutely insane. And this hurricane, by the way, did spawn tons of tornadoes throughout Kansas and Oklahoma.
I'm sure it did.
Now, while not technically a hurricane, I still want to mention Tropical Storm Cristobal, which made landfall in Louisiana on June 7th, 2020.
Ooh, this one was recent.
What's crazy about this...
this one made it all the way up to the Hudson Bay.
...is it held on to its tropical storm strength way longer than any tropical storm...
Cristobal's remnants in Wisconsin.
...storm or even hurricane on record. I mean, this thing was a tropical depression all the way up to Iowa/Wisconsin. That's insane. Here is radar imagery from that storm.
Okay, here we go. And there, it's still retaining its shape. And it's still pretty big, too.
I mean, that thing is still rotating well within Iowa/Wisconsin. It wasn't until June 9th that Cristobal became an extratropical storm. And this occurred while it was situated over northeastern Iowa. This is the furthest northwest a tropical system has ever dissipated over North America.
That's crazy.
In recorded history. It was a bit of a news story as well.
No, if it went any further north, it probably would have been cold enough to turn into a blizzard. No, that one that we just saw went all the way to Greenland, which means we can imply that it turned into a blizzard.
Well,
Cristobal flirted with Wisconsin. A love affair was born.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't believe this. It's something new for Wisconsin.
Nope. Yep. No.
This is so rare or never for the Midwest.
It's pretty cool. I actually said today.
It's very cool. Yeah, you got to watch out anyway. Even if, just because it's rare doesn't mean that it can't kill you.
That I was happy to be here because I kind of get to experience it.
Another rather anomalous tropical storm that did something strange over the central U.S. was Tropical Storm Erin in 2008.
Okay.
So...
in 2007.
Pretty much every single time a hurricane or tropical storm goes over land, it immediately weakens significantly. But for some strange reason, this specific tropical storm Erin, strengthened over western Oklahoma.
And it stayed in Oklahoma for apparently a while, it seems.
In fact, it got so strong that Oklahoma City received quite a bit of damage.
Damn.
Winds were reported to be over 80.
And then there's hail. No, that's the no. Yeah, usually whenever these cyclones make landfall, they weaken, but this one strengthened. I guess it got a little too close to the Rocky Mountains.
5 miles per hour. That would easily classify it as a Category 1 hurricane. However, it was never officially updated to be a hurricane. Kind of a weird situation, though. I mean, look at this radar imagery. You could clearly see an eye forming.
Damn. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, the eye is right there.
Pretty unusual for tropical storms. But yes, not technically a hurricane, so we're going to move on to the next entry in today's list. And this time, we're going to Europe to talk about Medicanes.
Medicanes. Mediterranean hurricanes.
AKA Mediterranean tropical cyclones.
Tropical-like cyclones.
Every once in a while, if meteorological conditions line up, you can get tropical storms in the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah, apparently, I guess the Mediterranean Sea doesn't have the type of... I was about to say infrastructure, but that's not how it works. I guess it doesn't have the right conditions to have many tropical cyclones.
I mean, they look like mini hurricanes.
It probably has to do with the fact that, you know, like literally south of the Mediterranean is a massive desert, which the primary feature of a desert is that they're very dry. They're not necessarily hot, because technically there are deserts like the Gobi Desert within East Asia that are very cold. And technically Antarctica is a desert because it receives very little precipitation. So I'd imagine that the conditions are just not that great for hurricane production. Like, when it comes to actual hurricanes, the seeding of the hurricane usually begins in, like, West Africa, because it's much closer to the tropics themselves. And so it usually has those conditions for such a pressure system to form. And then sometimes the desert sands can get launched up into the atmosphere and contribute to it as well. And so as the Earth moves about its axis, and then this moves, and then the storm moves like westward, it just gets bigger and bigger because of all the water that gets evaporated from the sea or the ocean and then condensing into the clouds. That's just how hurricanes work. And then they reach their fever pitch within the Caribbean, where the waters are already pretty warm.
One great example of this occurred on September 17th, 2020.
No, hurricanes and tornadoes are two different things.
On that day, Cyclone Ianos formed.
Ianos.
Over the Ionian Sea.
Okay. Another disaster as it hit.
It was initially a low-pressure system, but unusually warm Mediterranean waters, which were around 80 degrees plus Fahrenheit.
Damn, that's pretty warm.
Fueled its intensification. For this reason, it quickly organized into a tropical-like cyclone with an eye.
But I guess these ones are much smaller than the ones we get here in the U.S.
Very rare sight for the Mediterranean. Unfortunately,
and how bad was it?
On September 18th, it did make landfall over Greece. This resulted in at least 4 people being killed, as well as severe flooding and landslides.
Oh no, I guess they're not really prepared for this kind of weather. I mean, Greece and the sea are no strangers to each other. Greece is pretty much defined. Like, ancient Greece was pretty much defined by the sea, considering that they had like a whole colonies all over the Mediterranean. So I'd imagine that they'd be at least aware of these kinds of storms, but if they're this rare in the Mediterranean, I can see them not being prepared for such.
Thousands were forced to evacuate.
Oh no, some people had... Yeah, that's something that happens with hurricanes and shit. Yeah, they can be pretty devastating. As you can see here, lots of flooding everywhere, the buildings destroyed. They're no joke.
As tons of towns were completely flooded. Overall, the winds from
Category 2 equivalent tropical cyclone.
this metacane did reach 100 miles per hour, making it equivalent to a Category 2 hurricane. This storm is particularly significant because while metacanes in general are rare, usually a handful or so form each decade, most of them are super weak.
Yeah.
This one, however,
This one was strong.
It's one of the strongest metacanes ever observed, and it really did produce true hurricane force wind speeds. It caused quite a bit of a disruption in Greece, and of course, it did have that eye. You gotta have that eye. Some predict
I think the eye is one of the... I think if it doesn't have an eye, then it's not technically a hurricane.
metacanes may become
But don't quote me on that.
more frequent in the future.
Yeah, climate change allowing for that kind of thing. Yeah, that'll happen.
For the next entry, we're going to talk about hurricanes that occurred outside of hurricane season. Everyone
Oh, okay, yeah. It's Cyclone Vaianu, and it missed you.
thinks of hurricane season as, July/August through October.
Yeah, hurricane season is usually that long.
That typical hurricane season. But sometimes
It's usually like the later parts of hurricane season are usually the parts that are the most active.
they can occur in January. One such example is Hurricane Polly, which formed in January in 2016. Specifically, this hurricane formed on January 7th and lasted all the way until January 15th.
And where was this?
Surprisingly, it did
Like the hurricanes are specifically here on that are the ones that begin in Africa and then they travel across the Atlantic Ocean into the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean.
peak as a Category 2 hurricane with wind speeds of 100 miles per hour.
Damn.
Here's the path of the hurricane, and you might be curious, where the heck even is this? It essentially occurred over the open ocean, but the island chain of Kiribati was heavily impacted.
Well, technically, Kiribati lies on the equator, correct? So, and even then, would it be called a hurricane over the Pacific Ocean? Wouldn't this be considered a typhoon?
In fact, the hurricane actually caused a cargo ship to run aground near the coast of Kiribati, killing 4 people. On top of all this, there was major coastal flooding. Hurricane Polly is significant because it breaks the 2 most important rules of hurricanes. 1, it formed in January. It's not allowed. And 2, it formed extremely close to the equator, only 85 miles north of the equator. Look at this map of all hurricane.
Yeah, these are the typical these are where hurricanes are. These are where here they'd be called typhoons, and here they'd just be called like tropical cyclones.
Paths. See how there's this line of no hurricane?
And they usually have like predictable patterns. Oh, and this is the equator. Okay.
Hurricanes? Well, that's because that's where the equator is located.
Right. I think that actually makes sense because I guess I'm assuming it has to do with the Coriolis effect.
And hurricanes cannot form there because of the Coriolis effect.
Coriolis effect, yes.
The Coriolis effect comes from the Earth's rotation.
Yes, I talked about this earlier.
It's what causes tropical cyclones to spin counterclockwise.
And apparently there was just this one that existed off the coast of South America.
In the northern hemisphere, or clockwise in the southern hemisphere.
Yes.
So a hurricane can't spin on the equator.
Yet, this one ended up forming.
But they can get pretty close. Typhoon Vamai in
here we go. Here's a proper typhoon.
2001 holds the record as the closest tropical cyclone to form near the equator. It developed at 1.4 degrees north latitude in the South China Sea.
That's not far from the equator.
Or about 97 miles from the equator.
That's pretty close.
Technically, it's classified as a tropical storm, but it did have wind speeds of 85 miles per hour, which means it should be a Category 1 typhoon. This storm did bring flooding.
Changi flights hit by bad weather.
And landslides to eastern Malaysia, causing $3.6 million in damage and 5 fatalities. Next up is a pretty wild, out-of-place hurricane, and that is Hurricane Ophelia in 2017.
All right.
If you live in Ireland or the United Kingdom,
ooh, this one befell them in particular.
You definitely know which hurricane I'm talking about. Usually we think of hurricanes hitting Florida, Texas, the United States.
Yeah, they don't usually hit. I mean, we did talk about we were talking about that one Medicane that struck Greece, but at least that was in the heart of the Mediterranean almost. But this, I guess we'll see what happened here.
But no, sometimes hurricanes actually travel all the way up to Europe. And in this specific example, Ireland and the United Kingdom. It initially formed as a tropical depression in the eastern Atlantic Ocean on October 9th, 2017.
And then it started traveling eastward.
Then strengthened all the way up to a Category 3 hurricane, making it one of the easternmost major hurricanes on record in the Atlantic Basin.
Checking in on the...
Yeah, because they usually form in... Like, they usually begin to form in Africa, but it isn't until they start reaching the Caribbean that they actually become tropical cyclones and hurricanes.
Tropics, we have Hurricane Ophelia, a Category 3 hurricane, the only major hurricane on record dating back to the 1800s to form this far northeast.
So this hasn't happened in over 200 years.
It's going to impact Ireland. Yes, Ireland, as we head into the next several days as a strong extratropical storm is...
By October 16th, it had...
Damn, that's crazy. She said it hasn't happened since the 1800s, so that's over 200 years.
It transitioned into a post-tropical cyclone, but it still carried hurricane-force winds close to Ireland and the United Kingdom, with peak wind speeds around 115 miles per hour. On October 16th, gusts of up to 119 miles per hour were recorded near Fastnet Rock off the coast of County Cork. These are the highest wind speeds
Damn, look at all
ever
that.
recorded in Ireland. There were even 10-minute sustained wind speeds of 70 miles per hour recorded near Rochester
and they're not used to this kind of weather.
Point, also in County Cork. 360,000 people went without power during the storm, and there were 3 indirect fatalities.
Yeah, because if there's that many people without power, obviously they wouldn't have the infrastructure to deal with it.
Interestingly, over the UK, specifically England and Wales, Saharan dust filled the sky.
Oh no!
above. These hazy skies created an orangish, reddish looking sun.
Hurricanes. Yes, hurricanes by their nature are just giant storms.
And you can kind of see this effect when looking at satellite imagery. See how it's kind of pulling up air from the Saharan desert?
Oh, yes, I can see it. Yes, this little stream right here, this is coming directly from the desert. And that's something that does happen. Sometimes the Sahara... Like, fun fact, the reason why the Amazon rainforest is so lush to begin with, or really one of the reasons why it even exists, is because of sands from the Sahara carrying nutrients over. Which you would think that since the Sahara is pretty devoid of vegetation, being a desert, that it wouldn't have that kind of effect. But considering that the Amazon lies on the equator, the combination of Saharan sand and the fact that it's close to the equator allows for such a lush rainforest to exist. But obviously those same Saharan sands can have other effects in other parts of the world, and it's one of the reasons why hurricanes can even form.
Right there, getting sucked in towards the United Kingdom. Pretty sweet.
Yeah.
In the end, its far east strength and impact on northern Europe makes Hurricane Ophelia in 2017 one of the most out-of-place hurricanes on record.
One of the first hurricane to be that way in 200 years.
Other European countries that get hit by hurricanes on extremely rare occasions are Spain and Portugal.
And that one we just saw barely missed it.
Every once in a blue moon, you have a little hurricane that forms just west of these two countries that slowly drifts east over the Iberian Peninsula. One such example was Hurricane Vince in 2005. This hurricane had wind speeds of 75 miles per hour, making it officially a Category 1 storm.
The cover.
All right.
This, you see it zipping off the side of the screen. This is how unusual. I mean, we're going now to Tropical Storm Vince. Now, as of the 11 p.m. advisory, centered about 56 miles southwest of southwestern Portugal. And if you look closely here, you might notice our screen goes black right at the edge. It's so far to the east, our maps, we're having trouble getting our maps out. If this
apparently we don't really have that much good map of Spain there.
Landfall as a tropical system, since they've been keeping records, I don't think we've seen an actual tropical system still classified as a tropical storm or hurricane make it all the way to the European coastline.
Thankfully, though, there were no fatalities reported.
All right.
According to the National Hurricane Center, this is the only official hurricane to strike the Iberian Peninsula.
As far as we are aware, it's possible that they could have happened in the past, but were just never documented.
However, back in 1842, according to some historic data, a pretty strong hurricane may have hit the area.
Okay.
Next up, I'm talking about the West Coast in the U.S. Yes, on rare occasions,
Yeah, there can be hurricanes that form along the west coast instead of the east. Obviously, they form primarily along the southeast coast of North America and then along the Caribbean, but they can form along here as well.
Tropical cyclones can indeed impact the west coast. Usually they
yeah, but they usually don't really do that much. So yeah, like here they'll start. I mean, my avatar's in the way, but yeah, they usually veer off a ways away, but sometimes they can impact the coast. All right, that's fine, Brett.
Impact parts of Mexico, though, and sometimes those remnants can reach up into the deserty areas of the United States, sometimes causing significant rainfall in places like Nevada. Hurricane Nora in 1997, while technically not a Category 1 hurricane over the U.S., it was a Category 1 hurricane over Baja California, and interestingly,
and this one had the very peculiar projection.
Brought a lot of rainfall to Nevada.
And yeah, the southwestern U.S. has a lot of desert going on there, so it's already pretty dry. So.
You know that state that's like an entire desert?
Yeah, I mean, it's not unheard of.
Yeah, some other similar hurricanes.
And of course, they're not really prepared for that kind of weather.
Examples include Hurricane Kathleen in 1976 and Hurricane Hillary in 2023. But with this entry, we're talking about the extremely rare 1858 San Diego hurricane.
Ooh, so we're going back in time.
The only known tropical cyclone to have ever impacted California. See, California, there's some cold water off the coast of California. So
yeah, if the water is too cold, then it's not going to be good enough for fermenting hurricanes.
Hurricanes rarely form in this area or strike in this area.
But sometimes the conditions are just right and the temperature is just right to allow them to form,
I should say. But that was not the case in 1858. This Category 1 hurricane with wind speeds around 80 miles per hour caused quite a bit of damage to San Diego. It uprooted tons of trees, and it destroyed several homes, mostly from substantial rainfall. Of course, this happened so long ago, we don't actually...
Yeah, but nobody really remembers, so yeah, we don't have that much documentation.
We know the exact impact. The amount of fatalities are unknown. The amount of damage is unknown.
Yeah, because we did, obviously, 1858, we didn't even have the technology back then.
But still, an incredibly rare storm that was definitely out of place. Here's something that's pretty interesting, though. Take a look at the 1975 Pacific hurricane season. Look at all these hurricane paths over here. And whoa.
And then there's just one.
What is this?
There's just one that existed north of Hawaii.
What is going on over here?
That went all the way to Alaska, or almost to Alaska.
An unnamed storm that became a hurricane further north than pretty much any hurricane on record.
So the northernmost hurricane, as if that one that reached Greenland wasn't already enough.
Thankfully, it didn't cause any damage. Essentially occurred over the ocean, but
yeah, there was nothing there.
Form an eye. So that eye, you gotta have the eye. But we're moving on.
It's always that.
The next
and now Canada.
Graphical location, Canada.
I mean, at the beginning of the video, we already discussed the one that reached Greenland.
Yes, Canada has been hit by tropical cyclones and hurricanes in the past. One of the more intriguing examples was Hurricane Michael in 2000. Because this hurricane didn't just impact Canada, it impacted Newfoundland, which is...
Well, technically Newfoundland is a part of Canada, but...
way up there. It initially developed in the Central Atlantic on October 15th, 2000, where it would eventually...
Did this one also reach Greenland?
...actually strengthen into a Category 2 hurricane with wind speeds around 100 miles per hour. It then took a northeastward track, heading straight towards Newfoundland. By this point, it did transition to a post-tropical storm. However, it still had hurricane force winds.
Damn.
There were some power outages.
This is photo from a different hurricane that hit Newfoundland.
And heavy rainfall that did cause localized flooding. While not the most catastrophic hurricane on record, it still stands out as one of Canada's most unusual hurricanes. Finally, let's talk about the 2004 cyclone Katrina.
Alright, so last one for the night.
This is an insane storm. Let me show you a map of South Atlantic hurricanes. Ready? Pull up the map.
They're practically non-existent. And this is the only one that we've seen. One of my eyes is very itchy. I need to rub it. Oh. Oh my god. No, one of my eyes was really itchy. When you work at a bake shop and you have to deal with flour, that's to be expected. As you can see, apparently hurricanes don't really form in the South Atlantic.
This is the only one ever recorded, ever. This graphic shows the path.
Yeah, these are these are the average hurricane paths. Apparently, some of these go as far as Iceland, and these ones go as far as. And this one has a very wonky, janky path right here. And then these ones go into Siberia. Apparently, these ones go. They seem to go as far as perhaps Scandinavia, which wouldn't surprise me, but still.
Of every single hurricane, and they occur all over the place. But way over here, Katarina stands alone.
I guess the South Atlantic just doesn't have those conditions to be able to actually make that many hurricanes.
So a little background, the South Atlantic Ocean is often referred to as a hurricane desert. Very rare for a hurricane to form in this area.
Even the Southeast Pacific doesn't seem to have many.
This is due to strong wind shear, which usually tears apart storms, as well as cooler sea surface temperatures.
Yeah, you have to have. It's always about those conditions.
The atmospheric conditions are also unfavorable for cyclone formation. But somehow, in 2000.
But somehow, just as life on Earth finds a way, other phenomena on Earth find a way.
2004, Hurricane Katarina broke all these rules and became a significant hurricane. And it was also a pretty impactful storm. Overall, 40 people were killed. And also,
yep, and then once again, they weren't prepared for anything like this because nothing like it has ever really happened before. So it's bound to cause a lot of destruction.
Cost $350 million worth of damage. Crops were devastated, and psychologically, people were shocked.
No, I'd be pretty shocked too to find something that should be impossible suddenly just happen.
Just assumed in Brazil that they couldn't get hit by hurricanes, and then
yeah, that's the assumption.
All of a sudden they get hit by one out of nowhere. People were not prepared at all.
Nope.
What's insane is if you look at satellite imagery from this cyclone, it looks like any other hurricane.
Yeah, that's a pretty big eye too. The centripetal force be crazy.
It's pretty much indistinguishable. Look at that eye. Classic hurricane eye. This was a full-fledged hurricane. Out of all the out-of-place hurricanes that we've talked about.
Yeah, this one, no, judging from that map that we just looked at, no, this one is the embodiment of an anomaly.
Today's video, this one takes the cake.
Yeah.
It's the first and only ever documented in the South Atlantic Ocean, and it highlights
that we know of, that is. Maybe they happened before at some point in the past, but was never documented.
That under rare circumstances, hurricanes can pretty much form anywhere, as long as there's warm water. To this day, in Brazil, people still refer to this as the impossible storm.
The impossible storm.
Because the conditions needed for this to happen were nearly impossible. And with that said, thank you so much for watching.
You're welcome.
Be sure to subscribe for more weather/natural phenomena / weird historical weather events and stuff like that. Love you guys. Stay safe this hurricane season. We'll see you in the next video.
Yep, that was very... Yep. It just goes to show the Earth is a very, very intriguing planet. I mean, there are hurricanes and tornadoes and stuff that exist that can form on Mars that... No. Actually, not even just Mars. Jupiter. Jupiter's Great Red Spot is technically, by definition, just one massive hurricane. And the Great Red Spot is like 4 times the size of Earth. But even here on Earth, just when you think the impossible... I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say there, but Milo's Murphy's Law is, oh my god, is anything that can happen will happen. If a hurricane can form off the coast of South America like that, then it's gonna happen. I worded that completely wrong, but I'm gonna stand by it because that's just what I do.